Battlefield 2042's biggest remaining problems are balance related, and frankly, that's a good thing. Today, I want to talk about Battlefield 2042's state of the game, how it's progressed, what's changing in the future, and the issues that still remain. Alright, so currently we're halfway through Season 4's Battle Pass experience. The next major patch should include another map rework for Discarded, which actually looks quite cool, and after that players can expect another new map and more weapons with Season 5 and the last Legacy map rework with Hourglass. 2042's player base is relatively healthy right now with some decent stats on Steam charts, and of course Steam charts don't factor in people using EA app or playing on Xbox and PlayStation. And with the previous month's edition of Battlefield 2042 as a free-to-play on PlayStation Plus, the player base on that platform saw nearly 600% increase, which is honestly phenomenal. And without question, the player base has seen an impressive recovery considering how the game actually launched. Now that doesn't mean that the player numbers are where they have been with past Battlefield games, but at least the game isn't suffering from matchmaking issues or anything like that. Especially with crossplay enabled by default, there should be a vast pool of servers and players at pretty much all times of the day, at least within the bigger regions around the world. Now, a major aspect of this recovery is that DICE has made their game just far more stable and enjoyable and balanced. With nearly all the map reworks complete, there's been an entire class balance overhaul, improved UI designs, quite a few new weapons, and competent Battle Pass experiences. The game has turned a major corner. For me, there's absolutely a renewed desire to jump on the game more frequently just because it's actually fun. I jump on and more or less have a good time most of the rounds I play. It's re-injected a lot of the classic Battlefield magic and arguably improved upon many of the previous experiences. And speaking of classic experiences, we have finally gotten back to the point where many of my gripes with the game are actually balance related versus bug or major design flaws or missing features. And this is generally a really good thing. It means that development attention and work can be spent more on refinement versus major fixes and troubleshooting. Now, speaking of that refinement, there seems to be some obvious problems with the game that players have just had to kind of deal with since its launch. The biggest and most obvious to me has been the transport helicopter balance issues. Either it's the VTOL or the Hind, which have seen multiple balance passes already, but still remain problematic elements of the gameplay. Both air vehicles have a ton of armor, allowing them to absorb multiple rocket hits, even dumbfire rockets before having to back out of combat, while also allowing dual dedicated reppers in the back to keep them topped off on health with additional passive repair abilities and countermeasures. The vehicle is insanely powerful, and I think one of the core problems is that the individual players feel kind of hopeless against it. I landed 2 dumbfire back-to-back rocket hits on one and it still survived, so unless there's a large group effort to take them down, it feels massively unrewarding trying to kill them in the first place. And while the counter argument to this is that it should require teamwork and a lot of effort to take down a large, powerful vehicle, I do think that the general disorganization of Battlefield just doesn't facilitate that well enough, and that the vehicle has to be balanced in accordance with that. The skill it requires to hit a dumbfire rocket shot should be rewarded with more, and currently it just isn't really. Some of the best vehicle balance existed in past games where air vehicles had to be glass cannons, massive firepower potential balanced with the need to constantly evade and escape quickly with high pilot skill required. But transport helis are often referred to as just flying tanks in 2042, able to absorb a huge amount of damage before deciding to withdraw, repair, and then re-engage. And the fact that they're being used a lot as combat vehicles versus just transport vehicles is the major issue, and DICE needs to balance them back into that role of actually being transport vehicles. Now, the other major issue is infantry and armor balance. In 2042, in the right situations, tanks can just farm kills endlessly. The HE rounds on the main battle tanks are just stupidly imbalanced, allowing for crazy splash damage and one hit kill potential. They become infantry farming machines. And as somebody who doesn't often jump into tanks, I prefer playing infantry mostly, I shouldn't be able to hop into one and go on a 40+ player kill spree. This is a major skill versus effect effectiveness discrepancy, especially when I'm not running with like a dedicated repper half the time. Reducing the splash radius and shell properties on the HE round should be a priority right now, as well as looking at removing the quick repair ability for the tanks. A major balancing factor in vehicles used to be the need to actually get out of combat and get out of your vehicle and repair while in cover. Now you can just quick repair without having to get out and re-engage very quickly without the need for a dedicated repairer half the time. In fact, if you have a dedicated repairer, the vehicle becomes pretty much unkillable in many situations. A ton of the maps allow tanks to just sit far away and snipe kills, giving infantry very few tools to actually deal with them. Sure, Liz can try and guide rockets in at range, assuming that the tank gunner isn't shooting them down or the APS doesn't take care of them, but it's also a very unrewarding experience for Liz to endlessly fire rockets at tanks who can just out-repair them for the most part. You're rarely rewarded with the kills, and it's just a huge time sink that ultimately just forces tanks to repair a little bit more than they would have to before. This gameplay dynamic is super problematic on many of the maps. Tanks do feel much more balanced once they are actually forced to get into close combat and infantry actually have a chance to ambush them, but at range it just becomes a farming fest. And while I don't think past Battlefield games have done fantastic jobs of balancing vehicles perfectly, 2042 just has some major flaws to overcome. A big focus for the developers should be to reduce the effectiveness of tank sniping against infantry and force them to get closer to the combat area where infantry can actually fight back. I don't think these issues are super difficult to solve, but they do need to become a priority moving forward if DICE really wants to refine 2042's gameplay into a sweet spot. Now, interestingly, DICE continues to inject the base game with portal weapons. This was a major feature request from the community, but sort of like a monkey's paw, DICE granted our wish with some major downsides. The portal weapons all feel very out of place compared to the base game guns, and they don't allow for 2042 attachments or skins. They clearly get way less attention when it comes to balance, and even the animations are off. Like with the new AEK edition that I was excited to use, it feels terrible due to just a poor reload animation that's out of sync with the actual reload mechanic. These portal weapons simply water down the base game experience for the sake of nostalgia, I guess, and I do wish that DICE would do a major overhaul to the portal guns to allow for more attachment options, but so far they mostly just alluded to potential skins down the road. Now, moving forward, we have seen some leaked store info regarding year 2 for the game. However, this doesn't confirm that fans are getting more seasons beyond just season 5. Hopefully it's the case that we are, but I'm sure we'll find out shortly if more content is on the way. The season 5 map concept art does look cool. The Hourglass rework will also be a very welcome update, and I think players can expect an injection of new weapons as well. DICE also mentioned updates to the squad management system are in the works, which will hopefully give friends more tools to control their squads. The past few seasons worth of base game guns have also added a lot of winners to the game, which expands the weapon variety in meaningful ways. Over the next few months, the announcements that we get from DICE are going to be very important for fans of the game. Will more content keep coming from DICE, or will 2042's development journey come to an end in the near future? We'll have to see, but in the meantime, I am enjoying the game a lot right now. I think it's worth coming back to if you bought the game early on but haven't revisited, and I hope that the improvements and insights that 2042 have made along the way carry forward to the next title. What do you guys think? Are you enjoying 2042 much more these days? Let me know in the comments, and also check out this video on Battlefield's worst maps over the years. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.